Welcome to Tech News Briefing. It's Friday, August 25th. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. Back in May, Montana passed a first-of-its-kind law banning TikTok in the state. Lawmakers said it was to protect residents from spying, because the app is owned by Beijing-based ByteDance. They argued China could force TikTok to turn over information on U.S. users. Now, ByteDance has repeatedly said it doesn't share any user data with the Chinese government, and that it would decline to do so if asked. But Montana's Attorney General, Austin Knutson, who's been leading the charge for this ban, saw things differently. Our reporters spoke to him over the phone about why he zeroed in on TikTok.
We received a number of complaints at our Office of Consumer Protection here at the DOJ, and we started doing some investigation. It wasn't just on TikTok. We got some complaints about several social media companies, but the more we dug into TikTok, and the more my tech team and my investigators actually started looking into TikTok, the more concerned we became, looking into their user agreement and their collection of data, what they were actually collecting. A lot of privacy concerns here, so they kind of snowballed from there.
Tech reporter Meghan Bobrowsky was one of those who spoke with AG Knutson, and she joins me now. So Meghan, just remind us what this law does.
So it's a bill that was passed with the legislature and signed by the governor in Montana. And what it does is ban TikTok from operating in the state at all. So not just, some bans we've seen on government devices. This is for everyone in the state, anyone who has a phone who is trying to access TikTok in the state.
And has it taken effect yet?
It takes effect January 1st.
So for those of us who don't live in Montana, or maybe who just aren't familiar with Austin Knutson, can you tell us a bit more about who he is?
Yeah, so the Attorney General, Austin Knutson, he was elected in 2020. He grew up in Montana. His family's been in Montana for 5 generations. They have a cattle ranch. And he went to law school, got into politics, maxed out his time in the legislature, and his mom actually took over his seat in the legislature when he left. He self-described as a pretty assertive conservative, more so than his predecessor in the position, and he's taken pretty public stances on a number of issues, and he actually won't even let his kids on social media. He does expect that when they turn 18, they might go ahead and do that, but at least while they're minors, he's not letting them go anywhere near social media.
Why did banning TikTok become such an important issue for Knutson?
His office did an investigation into TikTok, and he said what they found troubled them. And so they were sort of already working on introducing a bill into the legislature to vote on this when a Chinese surveillance balloon floated over the state. This was in February, and in his words, galvanized a lot of legislatures. They ended up voting on this. Again, in his words, it really freaked people out.
After the bill was passed, TikTok sued Montana in federal court, alleging the law violated the First Amendment. So how does Knutson plan to address that claim?
Yeah, so his office's argument is basically that we're not regulating the content of the app. What we're focused on is the app itself, TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, and we have concerns about the Chinese government accessing data. And so they don't really care about what the actual content on the platform is, which is what he's arguing the First Amendment protects. It doesn't protect the company that's housing that content. So that's his argument. And he points to a case in 1986 where the Supreme Court ruled that there was a bookstore, and in the bookstore, it was also used as a front to run prostitution activities. And so the Supreme Court ruled that the bookstore was not protected by the First Amendment because to do something illegal, you can't claim First Amendment protection. But obviously, TikTok and opponents don't agree with that.
And what has TikTok said about that argument?
So TikTok's whole premise is that they're targeting one company, which is not fair and is illegal. And that's in addition to First Amendment concerns. That's what they say, is that this bill, if it was truly about regulating the privacy and protecting Montanans, it would apply to all social media companies, not just TikTok.
Why hasn't Knutson gone after more social media companies if his case is about data and data privacy?
This is where it gets interesting. So when this bill made its way to the governor's desk, he actually asked them to make some changes and wanted it to be more broad. He did want it to be, encompassing of all social media companies that are run by or have interaction with foreign adversaries. That was what he wanted, but it was at the very end of the legislative session, and so these changes never got made to the bill.
Montana is this pretty small state. It's about 1.1 million people. That's pretty much the size of Philadelphia. What do folks in the state think of Knutson and his arguments?
It depends who you ask. Certainly, there are people who think that TikTok is a threat and they're happy to see this legislation go through. But then there's also the flip side, TikTok users, creators who make money on this app, people who maybe just don't agree that TikTok poses this sort of imminent threat to Montanans. And there hasn't really been any polling or, any sort of good way of seeing how it breaks down. But the fact that even when this was going through the legislature, the final vote, it's not a landslide by any means. It's a 50-something, 40-something vote. That sort of tells you the mixed feelings. And it wasn't just Democrats versus Republicans. There were Democrats and Republicans on both sides of this vote.
When do we expect a decision in this case, or at least some kind of outcome?
In October, there is a hearing. TikTok is asking for a preliminary injunction to block the law from going into effect in January. And certainly there'll be a trial as well.
That was our reporter, Meghan Bobrowsky. And that's it for Tech News Briefing. Today's show was produced by Julie Chang. I'm your host, Zoe Thomas. Our supervising producer is Melanie Roy. Our development producer is Aisha Al-Muslim. Our deputy editors are Scott Salloway and Chris Sinsley, and Falana Patterson is the Wall Street Journal's head of news audio. We'll be back with a new show on Monday. Thanks for listening.